My name is Chinedu Vincent Akuta. On this episode, I want to talk about the current crisis at the Eastern Congo DRC, particularly the M23 taking over of Goma in Eastern Congo. And I want to highlight how it will affect Nigeria and Nigerians. Congo has been a problem-ridden country. Congo has been in crisis. Congo has seen so many wars, and there are so many problems affecting Congo at the moment, and we continue to affect Congo in the future. Now, this episode we only narrow down to the current issues about the M23, then the Rwanda factor, the Uganda factor, and then the Congo DRC factor in this crisis. And I will also highlight how it will affect Nigeria and Nigerians. But in order to do justice to this episode, it might be a little bit longer than other episodes I make. I'll need to classify this episode in 5 subheadings. And one is the pre-colonial era, the colonial era, post-colonial period, the 1994 genocide in Rwanda, the after Rwanda genocide, and then the Nigerian factor. Now, let's start with the pre-colonial. Before the advent of the Europeans or the white man in Africa, there were 3 particular tribes at the region that comprises of Burundi, Rwanda, and some parts of Eastern Congo. And these particular tribes were the Hutus, the Tutsis, and the Batwa. You find this, the Tutsis, the Hutus, and the Batwa in Burundi as well as in Rwanda. And you also find the Tutsis in Eastern Congo. They are called the Banyamulenge at Eastern Congo. They are in the minority as well in Eastern Congo, but they speak Rwandan language. Now, they lived happily before the advent of the white man or the Europeans or the colonialists. These people spoke the same language, they have similar culture, tradition, they understood each other, lived happily before the coming of the colonialists in Africa. The Hutus were in majority, they were about 85%, whereas the Tutsis were in minority of about 14%, whereas the Batwas were the least, 1%. Now, they lived happily, cohabited without any problems. And then the Hutus were predominantly peasants, whereas the Tutsis were cattle rearers. And then the Batwas were classed as the artisans. So before the advent of the colonialists, these tribes were existing in this region of East Africa, and they were living happily. Now came the colonial period. And then particularly, let us go straight to the Berlin Conference of 1884. At this Berlin Conference, the Europeans simply sat down on the table and then divided Africa according to their whims and caprices, according to their interests and goals, without minding the tribal attachment or sentiments. They didn't bother about the tribe or the culture or people. They just divided Africa without bothering. Now, that meant that some parts of Tutsi were carved into Congo DRC, particularly the eastern part of Congo. And then there were the Hutus, Tutsis, and Batwa in Burundi, as well as Hutus, Tutsis, and Batwa in Rwanda. With a little bit of, Tutsis, I think a little bit of them were in Tanzania as well, that region. Now, the Europeans, particularly the Germans who were like governing them before the Second World War, recall that during the Second World War, Germans lost the Second World War, and then their territories in Africa and elsewhere around the world were taken over by the Allied forces, the victorious Allied forces. That's the British, the French, or the Belgian. So the Belgian inherited I think Rwanda and Burundi. But before then, the Germans had this idea of treating the Tutsis who were a minority. So they measured the Tutsis, they classified them as the superior race over Hutus. Meanwhile, the Tutsis who were in the minority were the ruling class, both in Burundi and Rwanda. But I'm gonna lay more emphasis on Rwanda. So they treated the Tutsis as superior race to the Hutus. And then they gave them access to better education, they gave them access to better economic empowerment, and etc. etc. So they treated them with as superior people. Now, towards the end of, before they gave independence to Rwanda in 1962, the Belgians with the Hutus now abolished the Tutsis ruling class. Remember this. Tutsis were in the minority. They were treated as kings. They were treated as superior to Hutus. But towards the end of the colonial period in Rwanda, the Belgians again now turned around with the help of the Hutus, who are the majority. Now they destroyed the Tutsis ruling class. One wonders why they did this, but it's all about all the European divide and rule policy. Everything now narrows down to divide and rule policy. Now, the Belgians with the Hutus, who were in the majority in Rwanda, destroyed the ruling classes in Rwanda, who were mainly Tutsis. So at independence in Rwanda, the Hutus were now in power. So I've treated the pre-colonial era, I've treated the colonial era, now is the post-colonial. Now, at this stage, the Hutus who were in power, who were the majority in power in Rwanda, now began to suppress the Tutsis who were the minority, who were being treated as superior. And of course, you know what that means. The Hutus tried to use power to level up. And in doing that, they began to suppress and oppress the Tutsis in 1959 and 1960. Now, this was the first, let me say, what I would class as the first genocide. It led to Tutsis, the minority, and the people that were treated as superior, living en masse and going on exile to Uganda because Uganda was close by. So now is how Uganda has been affected with the crisis that began around 1960. So many people, many Tutsis now migrated or went on exile to Uganda. The Hutus continued to suppress the Tutsis, the minority. This was the pre-colonial era. And during this pre-colonial era as well, I need to highlight this. The Tutsi, remember I said the Tutsi were, some of the Tutsis were carved into Congo DRC and they were called the Banyamulenge. The Banyamulenge were also minority in Congo DRC. The government of Congo DRC was also marginalizing them. Mobutu Sese Kubo was marginalizing the Banyamulenge. They never believed they were part of Congolese, even though they were in Congo. But the government of Kinshasa at times we treat them as non-Congolese, whereas they were part of Congo. Know this. So this was the post-colonial era. Now, fast forward to 1994, when the genocide started in Rwanda. By the way, what caused the genocide was because the president of Rwanda then, who was a Tutsi, his plane was shot down. Then the far right, the Hutu extremists, now began to kill the Tutsis, who were still minority. So within 100 days, the extremists, the Hutu extremists, now murdered over 1 million Tutsis and moderate Hutus in Rwanda. The world stood by and did nothing. Even AU, African Union, did nothing. Because of the killing was too much. Now people had to run for their lives. Some ran to Uganda, some ran to Tanzania, and greater majority crossed the border to Congo DRC. Now in Congo DRC, the Hutus who were killing the Tutsis had relations in Congo DRC. So when the refugees were crossing over to Congo, both the Hutus and Tutsis crossed over. Nobody knew who was who, as the refugees were just crossing over. And now when they got to Eastern Congo, now another problem started. Because of this influx of refugees that crossed over to Congo DRC, it now posed a security threat to Kinshasa. Remember, the government in Kinshasa never treated Banyamulenge very well. And part of the Banyamulenge were the Tutsis who were being prosecuted in Rwanda. And having them come in large number to Congo DRC was also a threat to Kinshasa, the government in Kinshasa. And now the Hutus, they were also part of the killing in Rwanda, had also crossed over to Congo DRC, Eastern Congo DRC, and met with some of their relations and kin. So the Hutus who were in Eastern Congo were also a threat to Rwanda. So the point is now is that the Hutus were a threat to Rwanda because they killed Tutsis and ran away, crossed the border. Where they were in DRC, they were also a threat. And now the Banyamulenge and the Tutsis was now seen as a threat by the government in Kinshasa. Then other governments, other presidents of Congo, at times we pass a law to maybe take out, class Banyamulenge as non-Congolese, and that one will come again and they make a law to say they're Congolese. So they maltreat them, the Banyamulenge, the Tutsis who were Congolese. The government of Congo maltreats them, don't give them their due rights. So they face existential threat. This was now after the genocide, because the genocide happened and then refugees crossed over. So this event now was not taking place after the genocide of 1994. Now, the Banyamulenge, who were also the Tutsis, now knew that they had no choice but to start to fight for their own survival in Eastern Congo, which were their homes. So this was the origin of the starting of M23. Of course, they had several groups that metamorphosed into the M23. But this is just in a nutshell the historical background that led to the formation of M23. And M23, being that they are mainly Tutsis, Banyamulenge, who were the Tutsis in Congo, now had to fight for their existence, survival. And in doing so, they had support from their brothers and kids and kin from neighboring Rwanda. In fact, it's assumed or it's claimed, it's alleged that Paul Kagame now trains the M23, and in doing so, they claim that he uses that for illegal mining of mineral resources from Eastern Congo. So there has been a lot of allegation against Paul Kagame. However, Paul Kagame, if you listen to his interview, he maintains that this is a Congolese problem. The Congo should settle with the Banyamulenge, the Tutsi-speaking part of Congolese or Congo population. So like I said in my introduction, this is a very, very complex problem. Very complex problem that has its roots before or during the colonial era, predates the colonial era, or okay, predates, let's say, started from the colonial era, colonial period. Now, this is in a nutshell. The M23 now has now overrun Goma, seized the airports, you know. So I've just given a little bit of historical background in the crisis. And Eastern Congo has about 2 million people, so it's a bit of a big crisis at the moment. And Eastern Congo is strategic because that's a trading route for goods coming from Uganda, and then Burundi also has interest in what is happening in Eastern Congo because the government in Burundi is being led by a Hutu, whereas the government in Rwanda is being led by a Tutsi. And recall, it was the Hutus that killed the Tutsis in Rwanda. So it's a bit of a problem. It's a bit of a problem. So many interests. So many countries around the region has interest in what is happening in Eastern Congo. But this episode wouldn't allow me time to dive into whose interests, like the Uganda, the Burundi, the Rwandese, and then the SADC region. So that would be a topic for a different episode. Now, how will this affect Nigeria? That's another thing, which again, I said that I'm going to class this into 5 subheadings. Of course, the Nigerians who are living in Eastern Congo will be displaced because there is a war zone at the moment. So if Nigerians that have businesses there will be displaced, so they will lose their businesses and they might even lose their lives if they don't run away on time. That's one factor. Then the Nigerian government can initiate peace or can call for peace among the warring factions, can invite them over for peace talks. Nigeria can also participate in the UN peacekeeping force in Congo. Nigeria has done that before in Congo in 1960 to 1964. Nigeria has also sent peacekeeping forces to Goma under the United Nations mandate. Nigeria can also participate in AU peace initiative when and if that comes up. You see, Nigeria can also give aid, let's say, to Red Cross or Red Crescent or refugees, or decide to relocate refugees or intervene in any way possible. So, head or tail, the crisis in Congo DRC will affect Nigeria. And don't forget that the world has become a global village. Africa is just like a kindred in the global village. Whatever happens in any part of Africa will affect the rest of Africa. So these are the areas or ways I feel Nigeria can be involved in the crisis in Congo DRC. We might not be directly involved, but indirectly, we might be directly and indirectly involved. Nigerians and Nigeria will either be directly or indirectly involved in the war going on at the Eastern Congo. Now, let me know your thoughts about any other way you think Nigerians or Nigeria might be affected by the war at the Congo DRC. Thank you for listening. Let me have your comment and suggestions on the comment section. Thanks and bye for now. Bye.